When you watch the woman you've grown to love making the same horrible decision a second time, and you realize that there's nothing you can do, it's heartbreaking. That's the story of Emma, 26, and me. My name is Rick, I'm 28 years old, and I'm a software developer at a small startup in Cincinnati. Before I jump into my story, I want to tell you about the channel. We Are the Music Makers, I asked. And yes, they took the name from the Willy Wonka movie. But just like Willy Wonka used it as a metaphor for his chocolate, the channel uses the sentiment to draw the idea of the music made by two people who love each other. If you like my story, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. This is a labor of love for them, and your support would mean a lot. Let me begin by saying I met Emma at my previous job. I had worked at a web development firm in Covington, just across the river, and she was a secretary while I was a junior developer. We started around the same time, knew no one, and we kind of bonded as outsiders. Since we weren't getting invited to Friday lunch outings, we'd sit in the break room and talk about where we had come from. I had attended Northern Kentucky University, and she had apparently just gotten out of a failed relationship. She had looked into her soup container, sad and frustrated, and hinted that she had been the party responsible for the relationship's breakup. There was an awkward silence, and then she asked me about my college experience. I then went on to tell her how I had done my best to balance my studies with activities. The area was packed with lots of interesting places nearby, or at least a couple hours away. I was able to visit the Louisville Slugger Museum, Kentucky Horse Museum in Lexington, and even the state capitol in Frankfort. I even got to see several Reds games and checked out the replica of Noah's Ark and headed towards Lexington. Every place I told her made her more interested, but then she sighed. Eddie had promised some car trips and getaways once we had gotten married. We had some day trips, but his family felt like we couldn't really travel together until we tied the knot. Of course, you can see that didn't happen. I nodded. And then I decided to throw out a feeler, just to see if she was open. Well, I've been thinking of going to that airplane museum in Dayton on Saturday, get some donuts on the way, check out all the cool planes, grab some dinner, and then be home maybe around 9 p.m. Would you be interested? The look in her eyes seemed like pure gratitude, then excitement. She seemed to shake a little, but her voice was slow and soft. That would be nice, Rick. She looked down at her keyboard. I guess I haven't had any outing since, well. She looked up at me. Saturday? Could you pick me up at my apartment in Park Hills? I smiled and we agreed for me to pick her up at 8 a.m. On Thursday, Emma was sweet. She brought me coffee. She didn't know how I liked it, so she brought me a handful of cream and sugar. When the vending machine accidentally dropped 2 packages of M&Ms, I walked over and put one of them on her desk. She smiled at that. On Friday, she got weird. When I was on my break, she asked if I was going to back out. I shook my head and said I was looking forward to it. When I went to lunch, she showed up and tried to assure me that she could pay for her own meals. There was a nervous energy about her, as if the whole thing was going to blow up. I told her we could talk about it during the trip, but that I asked her because I wanted to go, and it seemed like she would appreciate the opportunity. She paused and then looked at me for a few seconds. You mean you're not going to pull the rug out from under me? She asked, half surprised. I shook my head. I want to go, and if you want to, then I think it'll be fun. That made her silent for almost a minute. Then she nodded, smiled softly, and said, I screwed a lot of things up, and at the end, when I was left with Troy, he kind of turned on me when I went from option to actual full-time girlfriend. I guess I've gotten gun-shy after everything that happened with that. I nodded slowly, lacking any knowledge of her actual past. I played it cool. Everything is negotiable, at least until it isn't. I wanted to make it through one date, just to see if she was fun before talking about the past. When I was finished with my work, I packed my bag and walked over to her desk. We're still on for tomorrow. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. I was sure she would have to decide otherwise, but it was friendly. When she looked up at me, there was a hint of doubt on her face, like she didn't completely believe it. But when I was firm, steady, decisive, I think that made the difference. Her smile went from friendly to excited. She believed now. Okay, yes, I can't wait. I asked for her apartment building. She texted it to me. We agreed on 8 a.m. It felt real. It felt better than some of the relationships I had. She didn't seem to have assumptions or hang-ups. She just seemed happy to have someone seeing her. I was at her apartment building at 8:55 and was knocking at her door as close to the exact time as possible. After a minute, she came to the door, dressed, but with her hair in a towel. "Come on in," she invited. "I've been finishing up. I just need to dry my hair. I have coffee." I accepted. Soon I was sitting on her couch scrolling on my phone while I heard the hairdryer running in the bathroom. 5 minutes later, she had come out, touching my shoulder. I looked up, and she was very attractive. Very light makeup, hair down but full, flowing down over the shoulder of her blouse. A smile crossed my lips. "You look great," I said as I stood. A smile reached her face. "Thank you. After I left Akron, I haven't had a lot of social contact, I guess." She let the thought die, but kept her pleased look at me. "So, day trip?" I nodded. We went out to the car, and I first took her to a little bakery in downtown Covington known for their coffee and donuts. "I've heard about this place," she gushed. "I've heard their croissant muffins are amazing. What if I wanted to try one of those in a Bismarck?" I smiled. "We'll get 3 items and we'll split them all. I'm getting their cold brew too." We ended up getting 3 baked goods and cold brews to go. When we got back to my car, she wrinkled her nose with a smile. This might be a huge mistake and an amazing time. I climbed into the driver's side. "There's only one way to find out." She climbed in and I helped her put the coffee cups into the holders and we took off. The morning shone bright like it was made for us. I decided to drive over the Roebling Bridge, which was slower and narrower, but I liked the view, and the bridge felt charming. Then we rode past the football stadium and then got onto I-75. We shared the pastries as we drove north, watching the downtown transform into houses and smaller businesses. We sipped coffee as the city gave way to the suburbs and licked our fingers as the developed neighborhoods finally opened to forests and farmland. It wasn't a far drive, and soon we were on the outskirts of Dayton. And when we crossed over the Miami River, I knew we were almost there. As we turned onto the small road leading to the museum, Emma asked why the area seemed so empty and why the buildings off to the left seemed so drab. I explained it was an Air Force base. Buildings existed strictly for function. Then we saw the cargo jets and bombers parked on the old runways. I could see how her eyes focused on them. "I've never been anywhere with planes like this." I nodded. "I've been here before, but it's pretty awesome." We walked through the galleries of historic planes, looked in on the missiles. We examined the space gallery heavily and then decided to pause at the little cafe and gift shop. I bought bottles of Coke, and then we looked over the souvenirs. Emma saw an astronaut Snoopy t-shirt, and I said I'd buy it for it. I chose a couple patches and pins of planes I liked, and soon enough we were done. Then we walked around the small monuments around the museums, and then larger planes sitting on the old runways. After 3 hours, we agreed we were done. We went inside one last time to use the bathrooms, and then drove back into Dayton itself. We found parking downtown and spent some time walking through the downtown and along the river. Emma had gone quiet for a bit, but then as we sat on a bench in front of the Wright brothers statues, she touched my arm and spoke softly. "Rick, there's something you need to know." I was engaged. I hadn't known that. "Engaged," I repeated. "What happened?" She sat looking off in the distance down one of the rivers. "I broke things off. I had run into an old high school crush." Then she sighed. "He and I started talking. First it was just grabbing coffee. Then it was hanging out at after work. Tristan told me he was into me, and he asked me if I would consider breaking off my engagement." Each sentence came slowly. Each pause was heavy. I had said yes to Victor, but even when I did, my heart wasn't in it. Victor was solid. He had a job as an accountant, but I was 24, and I worried that I wasn't able to live my best life if I was just a married woman. I was warming up to the idea as Victor took me to see his married friends. The wives all seemed happy and devoted, and I think things started making sense. Jackie would invite me over for coffee and talk about how happy she was with her husband. I'd go out for girls' night with the married women. They seemed so effusively happy about their husbands. Not that there weren't problems, but they all seemed to prefer to brag about their husbands' hobbies, jobs, and activities. I had just about gone into full buy-in, just about set to believe in the decision I made, when Tristan showed up. There was an even longer pause. He swept me off my feet, threw money around, and got close and romantic in ways that Victor wasn't ready yet. After a month of seeing him, I had swung the entirely opposite direction and told Victor that there was someone else, left the ring on his kitchen table, packed my things and left. He tried to stop me, asked what he could do, but there wasn't anything. I just wanted to be with Tristan, the man who made me feel alive, rather than the secure choice. And for a month, everything felt perfect. Tristan had a good job, was well liked, and we went out for dinner a couple times a week. He took me to the Kentucky Derby, and we even did a river cruise, but then as time went by, he began to pull away. He complained more, criticized my dress and hair, something he never did before. I began to feel like an NPC in our apartment. Her eyes were welling up. When one night I was coming home from work, later than normal, and I caught him with another woman. I didn't know who she was, and I didn't care. They were making out on the couch, and it was then I realized just how many terrible mistakes I had made. Victor had been cautious with me, but he wouldn't come within 2 feet of any other woman. He wasn't critical or harsh on my choices, even if he told me what he liked. Tristan didn't even seem to care. I grabbed as much as I could from his apartment, ran out, and went to my sister's apartment. She shook her head. "Wow," I said solemnly. She wiped a tear from her eye. "Yeah, I was crushed." He encouraged me to break my engagement, let me think he was serious, and then had another woman in his arms when I didn't have anywhere to go. She was quiet again. I tried to reach out to Victor, but he was icy. He was cold. It was a shot in the dark, but he just told me that after I broke him, he had to heal on his own, without me. I looked down. It was hard for me not to understand his point of view, but I was invested and needed to see what would become of this. I still had my own job at the software company, and with that I was able to secure a short-term lease on an apartment, but I felt like everyone was staring at me. I'd run into Victor's friends and family sometimes, and they would look away. Tristan's friends didn't pretend to ignore me, but anything that reminded me of him just ruined me. She looked out at the water again. I put in for a transfer, and since a spot was open in Cincinnati, I took it. I thought for a bit. For a fresh start. Then she was silent. "Yes, but it's been lonely. People nod to me and are courteous at work, but it's hard to be noticed. People walk past me every day. Bosses barely notice me. I am busy when a lot of other people are on lunch." She looked at me. "But you noticed me. Now that you know what happened, will you still notice me?" I thought for a bit, then looked over at the statue of the Wright brothers. That was oddly encouraging. I turned to her, took her hand, and spoke softly. "I think a lot of people make terrible decisions based on their immediate emotions. It sounds like if you had focused on those married friends and followed their example, you could have been immensely happy with Victor. And I can't really blame him." Her face turned red. "No, I guess no one could." She shook her head. "I was such a fool. He loved me like I was the only woman in the world, and I let butterflies in my stomach pull me away from the greatest thing I had in my life." She glanced at me, her eyes filled with self-reproach. "All right then, Emma, I'm not going to prosecute your past. If you've really seen the mess you've made, then I can focus on seeing the present." "You're not going to hold it against me?" she asked, her eyes shining. I shook my head. "I think you've done that yourself." Then she did something I didn't expect. She turned squarely to me, leaned in, and kissed me. It seemed like an impulse, but even though she pulled back after a second, she just stared at me, wondering at what my reaction would be. Her lips curled up a tiny bit, and her eyes still flashed hopeful. I took her hand. "Be careful, Emma. I might end up liking that kind of thing too much, and I might not let you take that back." Her face reddened again, but the smile grew. She squeezed my hand. "If I can't take it back, maybe we could at least ease into it." She paused. I liked it too. For me, that sealed things. I wasn't going off the deep end, but I felt like we had found terms that we could both be comfortable with. We didn't make any decisions. We didn't name things immediately, but we liked each other. We wanted to see where things went, and I was fine with that. We slowly drove back to Covington, and when we got hungry, Emma said she wanted to stop at Gold Star. I think Skyline's chili is a little too spicy, and I like Gold Star's hot dogs better too. I always preferred local parlors, but I could eat Gold Star, so I found a location and we sat down at a little booth. I ordered a four-way, spaghetti, chili, onions, and shredded cheese. Emma ordered a couple chili coney hot dogs with just shredded cheese. We shared, of course. I cut a bit of her chili dog, and she took a few bites off my spaghetti. It was quiet, and I liked it that way. I even thought I caught Emma looking off and smiling at the simplicity of it all. When we were done, it was dark, and I took her back to her complex. She tugged my collar and gave me a kiss that was a little deeper, a few seconds long. When our lips parted, I was smiling, and she said, "It gets better from here, right?" "Definitely," I responded. "Definitely," she repeated. And for 3 months, things went well. We went to some Cincinnati Bearcats games, did a couple quick trips to Lexington and Frankfurt. In early October, she asked me to do a video call with her parents. She had apparently been calling me her boyfriend early on, but it was still a surprise when she did so, when introducing me over her iPad. I think it went well. There was even some talk of meeting them at their home in Canton for Thanksgiving, but no one made firm plans. When the call was over, she turned to me and said, "They like you." "Good," I responded. "So do I," she said, with a knowing smile. "Just like?" I asked. She gave me a knowing little smile. "Maybe a little more, but maybe we shouldn't rush into visiting my parents yet. Maybe Thanksgiving might be the right time." "Maybe," she responded, her voice telling me that was a perfect idea. Little did I know that this was when it all began going downhill. Emma had made a little circle of friends, and one of them was a friend from college. I was glad for her. Lunch meetings, hanging out at each other's houses, even girls' nights seemed okay. But soon after that night, she began to change. Calls fell back. Texts dried up. She made this massive change, and I didn't like it. I could feel the relationship deflating. And I had decided a long time ago that I wasn't going to feel flat. After an uninspired dinner at what I thought was a rather nice restaurant downtown, I decided to throw out a bluff. See if I could surprise a confession out of her. "You're seeing someone else behind my back, aren't you, Emma?" We had been looking out over the Ohio River. It was a romantic spot, but I was feeling as cold as ice. Her response told me all I needed to hear. "What? How did you?" "I mean, no, I just—" My face went from frustrated to deeply disappointed. "Emma, there's no point in lying. It's all over your face." I shook my head. "You know that I'm not going to be an option or a fallback." I pulled out a $20 bill. "If you decide that you want to pursue whatever you have with this guy, then I'll just be a memory. I thought we might have something, but I'm not playing second fiddle or wait in the background." She looked at me and then at the money. "Rick, I don't know what to say." I shook my head. "I don't know either. I'm sorry, Emma." The next day I was at work, keeping my distance, when I got a knock on the door of my tiny office. Penny, who was one of the designers, stuck her head in. "You and Emma have had something going on, haven't you?" I nodded. She came in and sat down. "Something happened last night, and she's barely holding things together. She's had to run to the ladies' room a couple times." I looked down at my keyboard. "I'm sorry." Penny nodded. "Do you want to talk about it?" I shook my head. We weren't serious enough for things for me to feel like I deserved better treatment. She made decisions. I respected them, but backed out quietly. She looked at me strangely. "You don't want to tell your side of the story?" I shook my head. She looked down, confounded. Neither did she. Usually these office romances that go sideways end up with some background drama. But you two seem to prefer the quiet. I shook my head. I owe her a little more respect than to try to ruin her reputation. Penny opened her mouth to say something, then looked at me with a bit of respect. "Fine." Late in the afternoon, my computer pinged. "Internal office chat function invited to private chat by Emma." I accepted it, and soon a bunch of messages poured through. "Penny told me that you weren't holding a grudge. You would just let me go because you thought I wanted something different." His name is Edgar. We dated in college. He broke up with me, and maybe I never let myself recover. Then he showed up in town, and one of my old college friends reintroduced us. He travels through town every couple of weeks on business. I have been seeing him, but it hasn't been more than public dates. But I did humor the idea of being with him in my mind. I know that now. If I blocked him, texting calls, Insta, Facebook, would you reconsider? Finally, as I was finishing for the day, I made my first message in return. "Maybe." After that, screenshots came up about one every other minute. Blocked on her phone, blocked on Facebook, blocked on Instagram. I typed back. It's not just him specifically. It's about choosing me. It's about not looking around for anyone else because I'm enough. I gave it a minute, but then started shutting everything down. I was just standing up when Emma appeared, bag on her arm and looking serious. "Dinner?" she said. "Gino's Italian, my treat." I could tell she was waiting for a response. I waited a solid minute. "Fine, Gino's." I felt her take my arm as if she was on a mission. We walked to the elevator and walked the 2 blocks to the restaurant. Booth. Bread. She ordered Chianti for both of us. Then when the waiter was gone, she looked at me firmly. "Choosing you, picking you only. That's setting a high bar." I looked at her, picking up bread and taking a bite. "True, but aren't you really asking for the same thing in return from a relationship? Just not being so explicit about it?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. The wine was served. She looked at it, then back at me. "You've got clarity, and that's a little frightening. You've got a past," and I offered to overlook it in exchange for honoring our present. She went quiet again. I could tell she was thinking about Dayton. When we were together, I politely overlooked that she had torpedoed her engagement and picked a Chad, who used her while she was exciting and then found someone else when she was too convenient. Now I was reminding her, quietly, that I wouldn't share, I wouldn't be second place, I wouldn't be a backup. I was willing to push my chips into the middle of the table, but only if she was doing the same for me. A minute later, she stood up, walked around to my side of the booth, sat down and put her arms around me. Her head was on my shoulder. "When I was seeing Edgar, I could always just see you behind him, asking me if I was going to destroy our relationship for this. I knew that Edgar wasn't going to be the one, but I was looking for the chance to be able to get his attention, feel that rush one more time, and then be the one to walk away. End it on my terms." Then I could hear her crying, but I could see that you noticed the difference almost immediately. The tension, the chill, the distance that was unavoidable as I was letting Edgar pursue me, and it hurt. It hurt so bad, and then when you drew the line, it was horrifying. It meant I couldn't use Edgar the way I had wanted. I could either have you, only you, and let Edgar win from 5 years ago, or get the satisfaction of winning, and then, she sighed, and paused for a long time. Nothing. "Some battles aren't worth having, Emma," a whispered low. "Some victories aren't worth the reward." She kept crying on my shoulder. Then after a few minutes, she looked up at me. "Okay, Rick, I'm choosing you. Only you. No exes, no crushes. I can't live with myself ruining something this good a second time." It was at that moment that a guitar started playing on the stage in a different room, but it was as if our personal soundtrack was starting. I held up my glass of wine. She picked hers up. We toasted, and that was the silent agreement. We chose each other.